One of the problems we have today in the United States is the news. And I don't mean the left-leaning news or the right-leaning news or the made-up controversies or the opinions parading as news or the satire that's mistaken for news. What I'm talking about is the fact that the only thing you see on the news is stuff about the United States. I don't know if it's going to come as a shock to the average American, but the United States is not the entire freaking world, okay? We're not. There are important things happening beyond the borders of the United States. Things that are outside of our control. Things that have a direct impact on our lives and the lives of our descendants. And we're not hearing a bloody thing about them. And there might be reasons why that is. Does anybody in the United States know, aside from maybe the people who watch my videos, that China is now the largest economy in the world? Bigger than us. And with the size and scope and money they have to spend, they can do things that no other adversary of the United States in the history of the United States, with the possible exception of the British Empire for a little while, was able to do. And we're not facing up to that. Now, can the Chinese economy survive indefinitely? Can they succeed ultimately? No, certainly not. If there's one thing that the history of the second half of the 20th century teaches us, it's that centrally planned economies ultimately fail. Believe me, I'm a part of a large bureaucracy, and I can tell you that the words bureaucracy and efficiency are far apart. They don't go together. They're diametric opposites. The problem is this. If the elephant in the process of dying falls over and crushes you, you're dead. And that's what we face today. And nobody that I'm aware of on our side seems to be paying any attention. Let's see if we can change that, shall we? The article that you see here is from the 24th of November 2021 from Interesting Engineering. While I'm not 100% sold on everything they put out as articles, it's an interesting, very interesting site. They put out a number of interesting things, hence the name. And if you're interested, I would highly recommend giving them a look. You can learn some things from them. The point here is this. China's radar satellite constellation is growing, and it's looking at Earth. 398 launches of the Long March rocket. They're good at it now. Thank you, by the way, to a previous administration that shall remain nameless for selling the Chinese the technology necessary to launch these missiles. Ask me if you're curious who that is. China launched a Gaofen 3 C-band satellites for remote sensing of Earth. They're launching a whole platform of these satellites, and they're going to be able to keep an eye on what's going on the Earth. Previously, basically, the United States had not a monopoly on spy satellites, but certainly we were the ones who could keep an eye on everything and everybody else couldn't. But I can tell you right now, looking at the technology that they're deploying and what they're capable of and the money they've got, they're going to be able to surround the entire planet with a series of these satellites, and nothing is going to be airborne that they're not going to know about within seconds of it leaving the runway. Anywhere on the Earth. And honestly, I'm not 100% comfortable with the Chinese having that kind of information. Information is power, and a heads up on what your potential adversaries are doing almost immediately after they've decided to do it is real power, and we should be concerned about this sort of thing. But the interesting thing about this is not the fact that they launch satellites or that they want to keep an eye on everybody. They can afford to do that. What's interesting is something that went on in the United States, or rather didn't. This is a look at a search using DuckDuckGo, which I like because of its privacy considerations. Now, if you do the same search using Google, which is the go-to for practically the entire civilized world, this is what you get. Now, let's take a look at these two if you put them side by side. One has to immediately take note that they are very different. Well, that's not that unusual. I mean, they are different search engines, and they would obviously use a slightly different proprietary algorithm. But let's dig just a little bit deeper. The search request I put in on the 29th of November found this article on Interesting Engineering from the 24th on DuckDuckGo. There it is, right? The second article listed is from the 28th of this month, talking about the Chinese launching new satellites for Earth observation. So far, so good on that. They're up to date and current. All that's wonderful. Now, if you look just a wee bit closer, you've got the next three. The third one down is from the August, about the Chinese launching the 2 radar satellites. The fourth one down is from the 23rd, talking about new satellites for Earth observation. The last one is about radar satellites, Chinese imagery intelligence. That's from globalsecurity.org, an organization that is also well worth checking out. And then there is the Google search. China launches twin radar satellites for 3D mapping from space.com. That did not appear on the DuckDuckGo search. China launches 2 radar mapping satellites from Spaceflight Now. That was the third entry on the DuckDuckGo search. But there's one very interesting thing you should note about the search results from Google. Both of those results you see there listed are from August. Not a word about the latest Chinese launch, nothing about the security implications, nothing like that. As a matter of fact, that's just the top of the list. I went quite a ways down on Google and found nothing that would alarm a person. Google searches turned up things that sounded like scientific inquiry and good for the environment. We're going to monitor things like sea level rise, things like that. Anything about American security concerns? No, not a word about that was mentioned. So what's the takeaway here? I'm not entirely sure. I guess you have to draw your own conclusions. But I'll tell you a little bit about my opinion. My opinion is it seems strange that what is allegedly the most powerful search engine in the world, a corporation worth uncountable gazillions of dollars, with the most advanced tech, with quantum computing at their fingertips, with a staff unimaginably large, with allegedly AI and algorithms, the envy of the world, couldn't find anything about a launch that had occurred 4 days ago in China, something significant. Even if it was insignificant, Google couldn't find it. That seems very strange, especially since the security concerns of the United States of America are intimately tied to everything the Chinese do right now. And since space is about to become, to put it very, very mildly, a bone of contention very soon. In military terms, the high ground is what you want to hold. And space, Earth orbit, is quite literally the high ground. And Google, they couldn't help us. A tiny little insignificant search engine, an organization that is a rounding error on Google's bookkeeping, had no problem at all finding it. I find that curious. I find that frightening. And honestly, folks, you should find it frightening too. More on China coming up.